Hi guys. So today we're going to be talking about the topic of parallel and development tasks in a software project, right? So often big projects have multiple different tasks which can be parallel between multiple teams. But in order to do that work properly, it is important to do a proper decomposition and to calibrate the flows so that they don't overwhelm the development teams, right? So let's take a look at an example and try to figure out how to do it effectively. All right, so this is an example of architecture diagram for a software project. So let's take a look deep into it. So as we can see here is kind of like C4 style decomposition of components, where each component has particular scope and dependency between each other, and they go direct flow in one direction. And that's actually very parallelism friendly decomposition. Because as you can see, all of the components are clearly separated, and we can see that also sometimes they don't have dependencies, like for example APIs don't have dependencies between each other. They only depend on the database which they use for the data storage. So therefore, in this diagram we can clearly see which components we can parallel, which we can't, and how they relate to each other. In order to make the process quicker, I will use the tool which is called the planner, which allows to enter the components and activities and just automate some of the steps which are required for scheduling and basically parallelism. So here I just entered all the system components which we're going to implement, and that you just saw on the screen on the previous slide, and activities which define a more detailed explanation about what these components represent, what types of activities this involves. For example, some activities, they require just development work, some activities require release and testing, so I just input all this information into the system. Since we're interested in particular in schedule use case, I went straight to the schedule tab. And here we can see the configuration for a schedule. I defined just one team for now. And the way this app is working is it takes the teams which are defined in the schedule and the deliverables, the system components, which are desired to be delivered in particular time box, like for example for year 2025, and based on the decomposition model and on the days defined, it allocates the timing between those components and the teams which should execute those components. So if you enter all of the components we defined previously in decomposition, you will see that the generated schedule will contain all of them, but some of them can actually intersect with each other. The reason for that is that, a particular component requires not only development time, but also time dedicated to some other activities, for example, business analysis, QA, and some other things. So it is logical to assume that uh, two components can require just a portion of time of development time for a particular development team, right? So you can see on the screen that, for example, the system component website client application for the food department and toys API application, they intersect here, and basically the app it allocated for one component 33% of development time, and for another component 44% of development time. So in theory that makes sense, right? So that two like a single development team can work on two components, but in reality, it can be really overwhelming for the teams, right? For the team which perform these activities, and they may not be very comfortable to work on two components at the same time. But now let's add another team here and let's see how schedule changes. So I added another team with the same responsibilities, and now I'm gonna see how the schedule generated. So in the new version of the schedule, we can see that more components got paralleled by the app automatically. We see the API application and database were paralleled, and the website and the client application, right? And here we can see that allocation of time for development and for development team number 2 is less than like how we saw previously, like more than 70% of time was allocated. Now we have more logical allocation of 33%, and let's see how much is here, and 50%. So for multiple teams, it is normal to have bigger capacity for multiple components executing at the same time, right? So as we could see in an example, the daily activity for those components is also more than 70%, but now it's allocated between 2 teams, so it's not so critical as it was to be in the previous example. Another thing to account for is team velocity. So you need to make sure to understand what team is capable for, like what is the history of the delivery, and to assign a proper velocity value for a like daily velocity, or per year if the planning is done per year, or for some other planning period, like for a quarter or for iteration. So properly assigning these metrics will allow for a more predictable planning results. All right, I hope that video was helpful to you. That's it, what I wanted to talk about for today. If you have some more questions, let me know in the comments below this video, and have a great day.